Hello, welcome to Inbound Marketing University. This is the first class, How to Blog Effectively for Business, or Get Found 101. Our two professors are from Marketing Profs. We have Ann Hanley, who's the Chief Content Officer of Marketing Profs, and Matt Collier from maccollier.com, and he is an active contributor to Marketing Profs. So some business, if you'd like to ask questions, there are a few ways you can do that. For the live audience, you can use the box to the left of the slide that says Ask a Professor a Question. Feel free to do that, and at the end they will pick a couple. If you are on Twitter, ask a question using the hashtag IMU. And if you're watching this live or archived, the last thing you can do is you can go to inboundmarketing.com and go to the forums. So this is great for those that may be watching this after the live recording if you have questions, and your peers and professors will be there to help you out. So that's www.inboundmarketing.com/forum, F-O-R-U-M. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Ann.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, HubSpot, for having us here today. For the next half hour or so, Mac Collier and I are going to go through our presentation, Blogging for Business, what you need to know to get started. And so hopefully we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, so start chiming in anytime with your questions. Okay, so basically we want to take a look at what you need to know to get started. This is sort of a blogging 101. Let's take a look at some numbers. Basically, this talks about how blogs are increasing in popularity. More people are reading blogs, and if you're not blogging, you might want to think about starting. Here's some stats about the number of people that are writing and creating blogs. Again, clear indication that things are on the rise. 4 years from now, both of those stats are going to increase about half over current levels of readership, and as well as those who are writing blogs. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Mac now, who's going to walk you through the first question here. So what is a blog?
Well, what is a blog? That's one of those questions that if you ask 10 different people, you're allowed to get 10 different answers. And for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to assume that a blog is a tool that has two distinct characteristics. And the first one is that it allows you to quickly and easily create and publish new content. And also, it has a feedback mechanism in place via the comments and other areas where readers can leave you feedback on the content, not only that you're creating, but also they can leave you feedback on comments from other people. And when you think about these two characteristics, put them together and start to think about how could you leverage a blog as a tool to help you promote your business, or if you're an individual that's like wanting to use a blog to help you get a job, anything like that. But think about how the blog is going to be a tool to let you quickly and easily publish content, but also you've got that feedback mechanism in place. So think about how those two could play off each other and work together. Now, the one thing about blogs is that Google just loves blogs. And again, we talked earlier about how you've got the ability to quickly and easily publish content. That's something that Google loves about blogs because the content is constantly changing. You've got to Google, it looks at a blog and sees something that's active as opposed to a static website. You've got a blog that's constantly having new content coming up. It's constantly having new links coming in, links going out. So Google sees that as being something that's a lot more active as opposed to a static website. Now, what you have to consider is how that could impact your company. If your company's blogging and you have an active blog that does well with Google, that means that your company's blog is going to do well in Google search results. But the alternative to that is if you're not blogging, then you're going to have your Google results could be dominated by what other people are saying about you. So it's kind of like there's going to be an online conversation around your company, and if you don't have a presence in social media, if you're not blogging, then it's kind of like you've purposely opted out of that conversation. So here's this screenshot's a good example of what I'm talking about because I did a Google search for checkout Walmart, and it brings up Walmart's checkout blog at the very top two results, and that's great, but if you'll notice right under that, there's several results in a row that are bloggers talking about the blog, and a couple of them are kind of negative, kind of taking a swipe at it. So that's what happens because bloggers are going to be writing about your company, and if you're not blogging yourself, then you're not going to really have a say in what people are doing, and people are increasingly using Google to search and get information about you, your company, etc. So when they're doing these searches, if you don't have a blog and you're not active in social media, you're not really going to have a say or much of a say in the results they see. So you always have to keep that in mind. Now let's look at some of the components of a blog. And just for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to look at 4 different components. And those are the sidebar, the header, the post, and the comments. The first portion we want to look at is the post. And this is going to be, for most people, it's going to be the part of the blog that they're most interested in. This is going to be the dominant part of the blog, and this is where you can basically frame how you want to present the blog. You can talk about the information you want to put out there, and it kind of sets the tone for what you want to talk about, how you want to position the blog, and how you're going to use it as a tool to connect with your customers. And, Ann, did you want to mention something about how Graco is using their blog here?
Yeah, I mean, just as Mac is talking about, here's the Graco blog, and what I think is interesting about this blog is that, the post on the homepage here is about birthday parties. Now, Graco doesn't have anything to do with birthday parties, but what birthday parties and Graco have in common are parents. So why do they write about a birthday? They wrote about a birthday because they're attracting parents as readers. So, in other words, the message here is, if you have a blog and you're thinking about what kind of content to put on it, don't write about your company. Don't write about strollers if you're Graco. Write about what your customers, what parents are interested in. In this case, kids' birthdays.
And here's another example. This is Best Westerns on the Go with Amy blog. And like Ann just talked about in the last slide, how Graco is talking about more about parenthood and what's important to parents. Here, Best Western, they're not really focusing so much on their particular chain, on their hotel itself, but they've repositioned the blog as being more about traveling because they understand that if they reposition it around the idea of travel instead of just being around Best Western, that they're going to make the content a lot more appealing to a lot more people because if it's just going to be about Best Western, it's going to come across as being advertising. And that's not what a lot of blog readers are looking for. That doesn't promote interaction. That doesn't promote involvement. But this way, they've shifted the focus of the content just a little bit, and they're widened it out to instead of talking about Best Western, they're talking about travel. Now, the great thing about this approach is that they can still promote Best Western because they can now promote Best Western in the context of how they relate to travel. Because ideally, most people are going to be searching about travel. They're more interested about travel instead of Best Western itself. So they've kind of like broadened the topic area. But in doing so, they've made it a lot more appealing to a lot more people, but they can still promote Best Western in the process. This is another example. This is the Carpetology blog, and they've done the exact same thing here in this particular post you're looking at. Instead of talking directly about the carpet and the product itself, they're talking about interior decorating. And instead of focusing directly on the carpet, they're talking about how does the carpet relate to the larger idea of home decorating, because they understand that that's a topic that's going to be more appealing to more people. They don't want to focus strictly on the product. They want to focus on the bigger idea, or kind of branching out and making the content a little bit wider and makes it more appealing to more people. And again, this is still promotional because what they're doing is, and Graco did this and also Best Western, it's kind of like establishing their expertise in the wider subject matter, whether it's traveling, whether it's home decorating, whether it's parenthood. And that's very powerful. It's promotional, but it's indirectly promotional. They're still providing content that's valuable. This is Hulu's blog, and this is a bit of a different take on how you can use a blog because what they've done here, they use this as a way to sort of manage a crisis situation, and this is another great way you can use a blog because they had a particular development where they had some episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and they ended up pulling them off, and they kind of did it suddenly, and a lot of their users were upset by this, mainly because they didn't know what was happening. They just suddenly knew that one of their favorite shows was gone. And Hulu was able to use their blog as a tool to connect with their customers and just let them know what had happened, why they had to make that move, and then apologize and let them know that from now on we're going to involve you in the process and let you know exactly what's happening. And this basically they just use it as a good way to diffuse a potentially bad situation and use it as a crisis management tool but at the same time they were able to reach out to the customers, and that helps them feel a little bit better, and it helps instill a little bit more trust in them. So that's another interesting way you can use and leverage a blog. Now let's move to the second component of a blog, and that's comments. And comments are that second. We were talking earlier about how a blog has two distinct characteristics in that you can quickly and easily publish new content, and also it's got that feedback mechanism in place, and most of that feedback is going to come via comments. And the great thing about comments is that this is your chance to give the readers a say in the content that's being created, and that's very empowering. And when you can get your readers involved and interactive, that helps not only get more comments, but it also makes the blog more interesting. It's kind of like you're writing a post, and then hopefully your readers are going to come and comment on that post, and the end result is that the post itself becomes more interesting because of the comments. So anything you can do to increase interaction and comments on the blog, that's a great thing because it helps make the blog more interesting. And this is a screenshot from Home Goods Open House blog, and I'm going to reference, Ann and I will reference them several times during this presentation because they have a great blog. But one thing they do on their blog, which a lot of blogs don't even think to do, is it's something very simple. But when someone leaves a comment on the blog, they reply to the comment, and they reply with the first name. And this just seems like a no-brainer, but it's just a very simple and easy way to make not only the reader feel more comfortable, but it also kind of reframes the interaction as being conversational because you're referring to someone by their first name. It makes them feel a little bit better, and it makes them feel more welcoming, and it makes it easier for other people to chime in because it takes it from being impersonal to a personal connection, and that's what you want to strive for as far as on your blog and increasing comments. Now let's look at sidebars, and again, we're going to talk about Graco's blog for just a second, and what we've done here is kind of like they've got several different sidebar elements on their blog, so we've kind of like put them all together on one slide so you can see what they're doing. But this is a great example of leveraging a sidebar because there's so many opportunities you can connect with so many different people that have different interests and particular information they're looking for. Like, for example, here with Graco's, they've found a way to have a Flickr badge which lets them share pictures of some of their products. Some people may want to look at Graco's products and see what they're like. They've also got video there. If you want to learn more about the bloggers, they've got a place for that. They've even got their Twitter feed up there. Everyone's talking about Twitter right now, and Graco's found a way to embed their Twitter stream right there on the blog so you can follow them there. And if you look down in the bottom left, they've even got a poll question. And this is another way that you can get feedback from your readers via polls, is because this is a quick and simple way. Some people, they don't like to leave a comment. They feel intimidated maybe to put their opinion out there, but this is another low-barrier way that they can have a say and still put some input in there, and it's a lot easier to do for some people, and some people would rather do that. And it's a benefit because, for Graco's point of view, it helps give the readers another way to interact, but also Graco can use these poll questions to get information about their readers, about their customers, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a win-win. But this is a good example of how you can leverage different sidebar elements to get not only information out to the readers, but also even help get more interaction on the blog and collect valuable information from your readers as well. This is Home Goods blog again, and this is another example. You can see the sidebars over here to the right, and what they've done is they've got several different areas. You've got an area for customer finds, which is where the customers can share some pictures of products they've bought from Home Goods, and also you can see the bloggers. And also remember how a few slides back we were talking about how Home Goods in the comments, they always address the readers by their first name. Remember that. You've got that working. And then notice here how they've got the pictures of all of their bloggers. They've got nice pictures of who they are. You can see their name. You can see their bio. All of this is working together to help create an atmosphere on the blog that's more impersonal, that increases interaction, and it makes you feel more like you're not talking to anonymous people on the Internet. You're talking to people you know because you can see their picture, you can see their name, you can see their bio. So it's just a great sort of cyber icebreaker, I guess, just a way to get the readers more interested and more involved and give them a sense of, hey, I know who these people are. These aren't anonymous people. I know what they look like. I know their name. I know their bio. And they refer to me by my first name in the comments. So it's all trying to work together to encourage more interaction, and that's a great idea on your blog. And finally, let's look at the headers. And these are two examples from Graco's blog and also from Southwest and Nuts About Southwest blog. And you can see here you've got the branding in place, which that's a great idea. Both Southwest and Graco, they've got their branding and their logo here. But also you've got other elements that help you exchange and help you share some information with your readers that they might find interesting. Much like you can do with the sidebars, you can do the same type of thing here with the header. You've got, like, for example, on Graco's, they've got home, you've got about, where you can learn more about the company, you've got their blog roll, you've got rules of engagement. So there's several different areas where Graco can point the readers, and it's a great way to have more information there. You can also have contact information. That's a great place to put your contact information up at the top of the blog so it's easy to find. But it's functional in that you give access to more information that your readers are looking for, but also you've got the visual appeal as well. And the header really helps set the visual tone for the blog. So it's very important to think about not only having your proper branding in place, but also making sure you've got some functionality built in as well. Okay, now let's talk about some blog layouts. And we're going to walk through a few examples of some blogs and different layouts. And this first one is from Mozzie Bike's blog. And this is a two-column layout with the wider post column and one sidebar. And this is probably the most common layout you'll see. It's a very clean, very functional layout. You've got the post column is on the left. It's the wider area. That's what you want probably dominating your blog. It's got more area for that. And then you've got one sidebar over on the right. And we just talked about headers. You see a nice, clean, bold header here. It's got the branding in place, but it's visually striking as well. And you've also got some functional elements built in. So the two-column layout, similar to this or like this one, that it's very clean, it's functional, it's what's probably the most popular layout, and it's basically got everything you would need as far as a blog layout. Here's another example. We're looking again at Home Goods. You see they've done the same thing. They've got the wider post area on the left and the sidebars on the right. And also notice with the sidebars, what they've done here is kind of clever. They've got like each individual area is like a drop-down. If you click on, for example, the customer finds or meet our bloggers, you'll see a drop-down menu will expand down and give you more options. And that's a great way to add a lot of extra information and pack a lot of information on the sidebar, but it's not clustered. You've still got it where you can access it. If you want to see it, you can click on it. If you don't have to. And this is just another example. This is Turkey Hill's Ice Cream Journal blog. And, again, you see it's very clean, very functional. You've got enough room for all the information you want. And, again, if most companies, if you're wanting to start blogging, this is probably a layout that will work just fine for you. This is LinkedIn's blog, and they've done kind of they've just basically taken that same layout and flipped it. They've got the one sidebar on the left, and then they've got the wider post area on the right. This may be the way you want to look at it, and because you also have to consider that most people read from left to right. So kind of figure that in when you think about how you want to position the content on the blog. But this particular layout, very clean, very well organized. Everything is where the reader can find all the information they're looking for quickly and easily. Now let's look at a three-column layout. And this one, the difference is you've got the post area, which is in the middle, and on this particular blog, this is Dell's Direct to Dell blog. And then you've got two sidebars, one on the left and one on the right. Now, I would caution everyone, this particular layout, it can be a bit dicey because when you add in that extra sidebar, you're putting a lot more information out there for the reader. So if you don't have it organized properly, that can be a bit frustrating for the reader. It can almost be too busy, like you've got too much stuff going on. Now, this particular example with Dell, they do a good job here, and I think it's well organized, and I think the reader can figure out what's going on. But you really need to be careful because in some instances you can just have it be too much for the reader.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about this layout, and you'll see this on a number of blogs that are out there, is that they have a blog roll on the right-hand side. Under Direct to Dell blog roll, they list a number of blogs that they think their readers might be interested in. Definitely create a blog roll if that's something that, if you are going to have a blog, because I think it's a great way of sort of calling out other sites, other like-minded companies, other resources for your readers.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, and that's what it is. It's a resource for the readers, and think of it that way because you're providing more value for your readers. And always have that frame, and that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, Ann, because always have that in mind. Whatever you're putting on your blog, think about what value is this going to create for the readers. And that's why we're really focusing on, as far as the layout, think about how, is it too busy, is it not, because all that factors into play, because that's ultimately what your blog is going to have to be about. It's going to have to be a value creation tool for your customers, for your readers, for whoever you're trying to reach. And if you're not creating that value, then people will not read the blog, they won't come back to it, they won't share links, and they won't promote what you're doing. And that's how you promote yourself. You create value first, and that becomes sort of an indirect promotion. And here you see this is Walmart's checkout blog. This is another example of having a 3-column layout. They've moved the 2 sidebars to the right, and they've got the post area on the left. And I still think that works pretty well. Again, you see a lot of stuff happening, but everything seems to be fairly well organized, and you can see what's going on. And so there's a lot here, but it's not too much, I don't think.
Right. I mean, the other thing I like about this blog is that, again, in the sidebar, you can see most commented entries. If you're a reader coming to Walmart's blog, you might sort of figure out, all right, well, what's going on here? I mean, an easy way to sort of, have a swim lane in the deep pool is to sort of look at what have been the most popular posts. What have people commented on? What's really generating a lot of interest and excitement? And it's just a nice service for your readers to let them know this is the stuff that's sort of risen to the top.
Yeah, and I think Ann is going to talk about Marketing Prof's Daily Fix blog in a little bit, but on that blog, they also have most recent comments up there. And another thing that this is interesting, this is just a way of highlighting the people that are contributing to the blog. And it doesn't have to be the writer, it can be the commenter as well. And it's interesting because you can look on it, and if you see that one particular post is getting all the comments, that helps you, that gives you the incentive to want to check out that post. Why is everyone suddenly commenting on this one post? So it's functional in 2 areas. It's functional in that it helps you show who is commenting and who recently commented. It also shows you what posts are commenting on. But from the reader's point of view and from the person that's commenting, hey, it's nice to go to the blog and see my name is up there. It's kind of like you're putting a little gold star next to what they're doing, and it's a good way to point out what they're doing, and that helps encourage them to just leave more comments. Now, here's another example. This is Chronicle Books blog, and this, I think, is an example of how you can have maybe too much information and just too much stuff happening, because this is technically a 3-column layout, but they've got a lot of stuff up here. You've got widgets, you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you've got pictures, and it's almost like they've just tried to get too much stuff on here. It's kind of like it's all thrown up here. It's not, you see some organization, but then you're kind of like, where is the post, where is the picture? It's all kind of blending together a little bit. So this is an example of how I think that you need to be careful with how you organize your information. And again, it all goes back to thinking about what information you put on your blog, and is it going to have value, and think about, is it going to have value, and how do we need to organize that information as well.
One of the questions we get all the time is, so I want to start a blog. Which platform should I go for? Should I do WordPress blog? Should I go to Movable Type? There are a number of platforms out there. There's sort of no one-size-fits-all that'll work for all companies, but I think this is a good example of some of the questions that you need to start asking yourself to sort of figure that out. First, how many people will blog for your company? Do you think you're going to have a single blogger who's representing the voice of your company, or are you going to have a group blog? How comfortable are you with editing the blog's template? Is it something that you need to involve your IT department for, or can you handle it yourself? Do you have that geek gene, or do you not? Do you want to host the blog on your site, or do you want to go for a separate domain? And finally, if you go for a free blog platform, that's great, but consider some of the other monthly fee options out there too.
And also, when you're thinking about which blog platform to pick, also think about if you have the resources to blog. And I think this is a big consideration, because blogs, they're getting a lot of hype now. They have been for a while. And I think a lot of companies think that, well, we need to have a blog, and they think that they need to have a blog because they hear everyone talking about it. And you need to really consider before you launch a blog if you're actually in a place where you can launch a blog and if you should be launching a blog. And one of the big considerations is, do you have the resources to launch a blog? And there's 2 main issues you consider, and first one is, do you have the time? because it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take more time than you think it will going in. So you really need to consider that. And also, do you have the people? Because it's you can do it with one person, but it's going to be an awful lot of work. So ideally, it would be best if you could have more than one person, unless that one person is really dedicated to doing it. So you have to not only consider the time involvement, but also the people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that I would add here is just that, you don't want to put up a blog, be all gung-ho about it, and then abandon it, because there's sort of nothing worse than going to a company's blog and seeing that the last post was, 6 or 8 months ago. It isn't doing you any good. It doesn't make your company look like they're paying attention or that they're communicating with customers that they're interested in. In that case, it's really better to not do a blog at all and to think about some other options, other ways of communicating with customers.
And to tying back into that time consideration, you just need to approach your blog as being something that you're going to do from now on. I like to tell people that it does not have an expiration date. It's something you're going to do from now on. And you really need to have that mindset, because if you don't, it's kind of like you're looking at, like Ann said, it's like you're going to start and stop. And it is. It's a bad thing when you actually find a blog and you see that the last post was 6 months ago, because it's kind of like you've got a limited time offer with your customers to talk with them. And when they're ready to talk, it's like, well, sorry, we've already abandoned this blog. We're not going to talk to you now. And that's terribly frustrating for your customers, because it's like they see this and they get excited because you're using these social tools to be social with them, and they try to interact with you, and then it's like you're pulling the rug out from under it. So think about that, and this is why you really need to consider the time issue and the time resources you have going in, because if you don't have the time in place and you can't commit to it for the long term, you'd probably be better off not to start it if you can't stick with it. And also, when you're thinking about the bloggers that you're going to pick to do this, there's several considerations, but really focus on the people that are really passionate about blogging. Because, again, when you start blogging, unless you're an outlier case, you're not going to see very little traffic, very little comments, very little traction at all at first. And, again, it's going to take time to build all this. And if you start out, you're going to want to see some results, and you're not going to see the results in most cases, and you may get frustrated, you may get discouraged, think that maybe we shouldn't have done this, but it's going to take a long time to get that traction. And the people that have the passion for the blogging, they will be the people that will stick with it. The people that were just thinking, it's kind of cool, let's try out blogging and see what this is. They'll try it out, and they won't see any response to what they're writing, and they'll get discouraged, and they'll want to quit. But the people that are passionate about it, those are the people that will want to stick with it.
Right, exactly. So, in other words, pick somebody who has healthy self-esteem, because they're going to feel like they're blogging into a vacuum for a while. All right, so what else should you look for when you're looking for the bloggers who will write for you in your company? Think about people who really know social media, who are passionate about the tools, who like to blog, who like to write, who know Twitter, who are sort of familiar in the space and don't feel like a fish out of water. Think of people who are passionate about your company, about your products and services. Think about maybe your users in addition to your employees. Think about people who are passionate about connecting and helping your customers, really people who are interested in being customer-focused, who like to talk back to people, who like to engage in a dialogue with your customers, and who really thrive in that scenario. And finally, this is my own personal pet peeve. Please pick people who can write. I think there's a big difference between being passionate about writing and actually being able to write. So I'm sorry to wear my editor hat for a second, but it really will do you a lot of good long term. One of the questions that companies often face is, should we just have our CEO blog? I think that's actually a really great idea, but that assumes all of the above. That your CEO is interested in social media, that he or she is passionate about blogging and about leveraging the tools. They don't have to know everything about it, but at least they have to have an interest and a willingness to learn, and make sure that they really enjoy writing. This is a good example of the Marriott blog. Bill Marriott does a great job with, communicating with customers. I will say that they don't update it very, very frequently, but I think that's okay because, this is sort of a separate situation where you've got the CEO of a company who's talking directly to customers, and they're having a chance to talk back to him. So that's a really special and unusual thing. Another thing to think about is maybe it's not one person, maybe it's a couple of people. This is a blog from Fandango. They have their employees who are writing movie reviews, stuff that they've seen recently, stuff that's coming out. Really great way of involving more than a few people in the company. It also helps to sort of diffuse the work. As Mac was talking about earlier, it's really important to update it on a regular basis, to not just, let it flounder. This is a good way to sort of rely on a couple of different people within a company to represent the voice of the company. This works in the B2B space, too. This is a shot of the Marketing Process Daily Fix, which is a blog that I'm passionate about and I edit. So that's just an example of how it works in the B2B space. Another thought is to look outside your company. Certainly you have employees in your company who are passionate about it, but this is the Fisketeers blog. It's from Fist for Scissors. And the people that they have blogging here are people who are passionate about scissors. I think they're scrapbookers. Is that right, Mac?
They're scrapbookers.
They're scrapbookers. So what they did is they went out and they found people who were active on forums about scrapbooking and brought them in, and they are letting their evangelist blog for them, essentially. One caveat here, don't just pick them and then, sort of plop them on the blog and let them run free. Give them some training, give them some guidelines, let them know, sort of what they should be doing, how they should be communicating with customers. You don't have to control the message to the point that you tell them what to blog about, but I do think it's useful to give them some guidelines about, story ideas and sort of ways to approach it. There's a lot of information. There's lots of different approaches to blogging. I'm not going to turn this into a sales pitch by any means, but I did just want to mention that if you're interested in thinking about blogging from a sort of 360 view, think of Marketing Process, tons of resources. One of the ones we just came out with is called Smart Tools Blog Marketing. The goal of this is always to ensure that your blog attracts new business and captures the attention and imagination of your current clients, and really serves as a dynamic and an active hub for communicating with them, for really exchanging information between you and your customers, your peers, your suppliers, anybody, all while communicating your value proposition. So we are happy to take questions in a few minutes, but before we do, this is Mac's contact information. I'm sure that Mac is happy to chat with any of you in more in-depth about blogging or anything social media. And here's me and my contact information. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. They've been rolling in during this presentation. So let me jump right into that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne and Mac. That was fantastic. We have a lot of questions, so we're unfortunately not going to be able to answer all of them, but we can start from the beginning. So here's a simple but good question. What is a blog roll, and how is it best used?
Anne, did you want to take that, or I can do either one?
Mac, why don't you go for it?
Okay. Anne touched on this a little bit during the presentation, but think of a blog roll as basically being a list of other sites that you sort of endorse to your readers. And they can be like, for example, if you're in a particular industry, it could be other sites that are popular in that particular industry, other blogs oriented by a particular industry topic. And a lot of people may think, well, I don't know exactly which blogs I should put on my blog roll. One of the tricks and sort of tips that I use is when you have people that will come to your blog and comment on your blog, and this works to help build interaction as well, but kind of follow them back to their blog and just kind of look at what blogs they have on their blog rolls. And if you do this over a period of time, you'll start to see that the same 4 or 5, maybe even 10 blogs are popping up on a lot of people's blog rolls. So this tells you that, hey, these are blogs that a lot of people are interested in. So that's a good place to sort of pick some of the blogs that you can put on your blog roll. But again, just kind of think of your blog roll as being a list of blogs that you endorse and kind of position it sort of as a resource for your readers. You can put links like, for example, if you want to add a link to your website or if you have some other company sites you'd like to put in, that's fine. You can do that. But I wouldn't just use completely other company sites on your blog roll, because
when you do that, that kind of defeats the purpose because your readers are hoping you're giving them a list of sites that are related to yours or maybe content that's similar that they can check out, and then they see that you're just sending them to other company sites. That's kind of a turnoff. So, again, with anything else on your blog, kind of position it from the reader's point of view and kind of look at creating a resource and something of value.
That's great. Mac, how about another question for you? A lot of questions about comments. One is, how should you moderate comments? What if you're getting a lot of negative comments? What's a good best practice for people to work with those?
Well, I think at first what you would probably want to do is create a formal blog policy, a formal comment policy, and have that posted somewhere on your blog. And the basic idea is just kind of spell out what's going to happen from the reader's point of view. And a lot of people are worried, concerned about negative comments. What should we do about them? Should we delete them? Should we address them? I saw a few questions on Twitter, people asking about that. Really, if you get a negative comment, that's really a great opportunity, because what's going to happen is, let's say, for example, that someone leaves a comment on your blog and they're critical about your company. From the reader's point of view, if I come along and I see that, what I'm going to be looking at, I want to see how you respond to that comment. And if you take the time to address the issue that the commenter is coming up with, if you let them know that you appreciate the feedback, if you're respectful, and if you go out of your way to try to solve the problem that they have, other readers are really going to pick up on that, and it really is a chance for you to leave a positive impression on other readers. Because ultimately, a lot of people that leave negative comments, they're doing so because they've tried to get in touch with you, or they've tried to find a solution to their problem through other means. They can't find the answer they're looking for, so they've kind of thrown up their hands. This is the last resort. I'm going to yell at you and see if you'll pay attention to me. And if you will, normally what will happen, your readers will respond. It will really give a favorable impression upon them. But a lot of times the person that was initially upset, that was voicing the negativity towards you, they will normally turn around their opinion and become much more positive simply because you reached out to them. So I would always you should always try to respond to comments as best you can anyway, but definitely don't be fearful of negative comments, because if you respond correctly, if you're respectful, if you let the person know that you do want to have an interaction with them and you do want to address their issue, that's normally going to be something that's really going to reflect positively on you.
That's really good. We have a few questions with consumer versus B2B, and one person's question is, how can you appeal to a readership when it's business-oriented with B2B blogs? How can you do that?
Well, I think there's a lot of overthinking about this, whether or not should you be different for B2B or B2C. Ultimately, it just comes down to knowing who your end audience is. And as long as you know who the person is that you're trying to reach, the only thing you need to do then is just craft your content so that it resonates with them. There's a good example. We mentioned briefly Mozzie Bikes during the presentation. And they're technically a B2B company, but what they're doing is they're using the blog as a way to not only interact and get information to their vendors, but also to the end customers as well, because Tim Jackson, who's the brand manager for Mozzie, he told me a story about how he would go to local shops where they sell Mozzie bikes, and he would talk to the owners, and the owners would start asking him questions about the bikes. And he would be like, how did you know about this? Because we haven't even released that to the press yet. And he said, well, I know about it because our customers are coming in here and they read about it on your blog and they're asking about it already. So it's kind of like a way to just connect with both the vendor and the end user at the same time. But just don't overthink it. Just put yourself in the mindset of who are we trying to reach and what information are they going to be looking for. And that's all you have to do. Once you have that figured out, then just provide the content that's valuable to them.
That makes sense. Here's a good question from Twitter, and this has to do with sidebar items. And their question is, how many sidebar items are too many? When does banner blindness kick in?
That one's one you may have to play with a little bit, because ultimately I think if you can add something and it still provides some sort of, again, we go back to value over and over and over, but really, I think you need, if you're going with 2 columns, that's well organized. But like we talked about during the session, if you go to 3 columns, you really have to be careful because you're putting a lot of information out there. I think it depends on, too, which area of the blog you want to put more emphasis on. Is it going to be your post, which for almost all blogs it will be, or is it going to be the sidebar? If you've got a lot of relevant information that needs to go in the sidebars, then it could mean that you need to go with 2 columns. You also need to consider that you need to consider how you structure the information on the sidebars. What do you want to have up at the very top that's going to be on that above the fold, as they call it? Like when you go to a blog, this is what you're going to see. The other information is information that's down further on the sidebar that you'll have to scroll down to see. So also consider that. Information like your contact information, how to subscribe to the blog, what is the blog. That's vital information that needs to be up near the top of the sidebar. So really kind of play it by ear. And if you make changes, let's say, for example, you have a 2-column layout and you decide that you have a lot more stuff you want to put on sidebars, let's go with 3 columns, and you make that change. Then ask your readers what they think. It could be that the readers love it. It could be that the readers just absolutely hate it. So that's another way to also get some interaction from the readers, and that, again, that makes them a little bit more responsive because it lets them know that you're asking for their feedback, and it helps give them a little bit more of a say in the flow of the blog itself.
Now, Mac, what about where your blog should be hosted? I have a lot of people, they're talking about, should it be on WordPress? Should it be on Blogger? Should I use my own domain? What software, what program should people use to host their blog? Are there search engine optimization capabilities to use one or the other? What would you recommend?
Well, I think the first thing I would look at is how capable and how comfortable are you in editing templates, in tinkering with the blog itself. I mean, if you have like a dedicated IT department or if you have someone that you can outsource this to, then you may want to look at something with a little bit more capability and functionality, like going with a self-hosted WordPress blog. Or if you're just like a small business that is kind of shoestringing this, you just want to have a blog up, you basically want a plug-and-play alternative, then you may want to go for like a Blogger blog or the free WordPress.com version. It really depends. I think one of the biggest considerations is where you are as far as being comfortable with tinkering with the blog. If you love tinkering, if you're comfortable editing code, that sort of thing, then you could probably go with something that offers a little bit more functionality like WordPress.org or Movable Type. But if you just want a plug-and-play solution, if you just want something that you can quickly be up and blogging in a few minutes, then you may want to go with something like Blogger, TypePad, or WordPress.com.
Cool. What about the domain, the URL of the blog? Do you recommend it have the word Blogger or Blogspot in it, or should it be their own domain?
That one, really, I think it's really just personal choice. You're going to have some SEO benefits as far as hosting the blog directly on the same URL as your main website. On the other hand, some readers may see the blog as being slightly more credible or /independent if it's hosted on its own site, like, for example, Blogspot or WordPress.com or something like that. Ultimately, I think it's just up to you, because I think a few years ago there was really a big issue as far as a blog was viewed as being a little bit more credible if it was on its own domain away from the company website, but I don't think that's really as big of an issue anymore. So just ultimately, I think it's mainly just personal preference. Whichever one you're more comfortable with, go with it.
Cool. And
sorry, Rebecca, this is Ann.
Oh.
I apologize. I got kicked out, and I'm finally back. So, hi. I just wanted to make a quick comment on that. I mean, I think that it's okay to involve your IT department. I think there's, if you have an IT department, assuming that you do, I feel like that there's often a feeling that, a blog is completely do-it-yourself. Unless you're, as I mentioned before, unless you have that geek gene, you may need to call in some outside help with it. So factor that into what kind of resources you may or may not need for your blog.
That's great. And Ann, next question's for you. I feel like you'd be good at this one. Talk about measuring the performance of your blog. How do you know your blog is working for your business or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that I would say is that, blogs are very conversational, and so the first thing that I would say is that you really do have to measure the amount of interaction there. So there's a number of metrics that you can use to do that. You can measure the number of subscribers by FeedBurner, for example. You can measure the number of comments that you're getting on your post. You can measure the conversion of any sort of either ads that you're running on your site, any sort of trackbacks to your main site, to your landing pages that you're creating. That'll drive traffic from the blog to your main site if that's something that you want to do. Mac actually has some strong feelings on this, not to make you work harder, Mac, but you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it varies it just depends on what your individual needs are. I mean, you can go with, if you want to base your metrics more around interaction and conversational elements, you could track you could track comments per post, you could track incoming links, traffic, what have you, where that traffic is coming from. I think that you can measure what's going on with your blog. It just depends on what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to look at traffic going to your website, what have you. But what I would do is whatever you're wanting to measure, start measuring it from the get-go, because you want to be able to go back and look and say, when we launched this blog, here's what we had as far as traffic, comments, whatever metrics we're looking at, and it'll all be zero when you start. But you at least want to have something that you can go back and look at what's changing over time. And do it down to the individual post level in many cases. Like, for example, if you write about this particular topic and suddenly traffic goes up 20% over the next 24 hours, that's probably a sign that whatever you wrote about resonated with your readers. And that could be a sign that, hey, that's a topic we need to start nailing from now on, and do that and see what happens. But I obsess over blog traffic. I'm just constantly watching it because I want to see what these changes are. When a change happens, I want to be able to say, okay, this spike probably happened because of this. And it could even be activity that's associated off your blog. It could be that suddenly a mega power user on Twitter like a Chris Brogan just retweeted one of the links to one of your posts and sent it out to his 80 million followers. So something like that. But the point is just track as much as you can and track it over time, so that way when changes happen, you have a better understanding of why they happened, and that can only help you as you move forward as far as tailoring your blog content so that it's more valuable to your readers.
Right, and actually I have two other resources that just come to mind for if you really want to dig into what you should be measuring and how you should be measuring it. Two resources that I could recommend are Katie Payne, who I think her site is KD as in dog Payne, PAINE.com. Has a lot of stuff about measuring the effect of social media and blogs, but sort of puts it into a context that I think a lot of businesses can appreciate. And the other one I would recommend is Avinash Kaushik, Kaushik. I think it's Kaushik.net. Also writes a lot about how to measure the effectiveness of success with any kind of social media, but particularly blogging.
That's great. Well, it's getting almost to the end of the hour, so maybe I will pick maybe two last questions to be answered. One, so you guys talked about picking people to blog for your company, and one question I have is, should you hire someone outside of your company to blog, and are journalists good bloggers?
Ann, why don't you let me take the first one, then you can do the one on journalists, because I think that's perfect for you.
Sure, go ahead.
As far as hiring someone outside to write for you, I would not suggest that they actually write the content. I think if you do hire someone, you should hire them to train you on how to improve your blogging efforts. And this brings up a larger point, and this is one of my sort of soapbox issues, but if you do hire a consultancy, if you do hire a firm, someone to help you with your blogging efforts, please promise me that you will make sure that they will provide you with training on whatever it is that they're implementing. If they're going to launch a blog for you, if they're going to do whatever, just make sure that you get them to train you on whatever it is, the tools, whatever that they're implementing, because otherwise what's going to happen is they're going to implement all these tools for you. Then when the project ends, they're going to walk away, and you're still going to have no idea how to use these tools. So make sure that you get training from them on whatever it is they're helping you with.
Yeah, and I would say to the second part of that question, Rebecca, about whether journalists make good bloggers, I would say, yeah, absolutely they do, provided that you have a disclosed relationship with them. I wouldn't have them ghostwrite anything for your company, certainly. I mean, I think it's important for them to represent your company as who they are and what they bring to the table. But, considering the state of the newspaper industry, there's tons of unemployed journalists out there, or would-be journalists maybe coming right out of school, who I think would be great writers for the blog. I mean, journalists come equipped with all kinds of skills in terms of writing for the audience, figuring out how to write content that appeals to the audience that you're trying to reach. They can write, so I think they really would offer quite a bit.
That's great. And how about this for our last question? And it's actually a great way to segment into our presentation this afternoon, and that's how can you make your blog more findable, whether it be in social media or in search engines? For either Ann or Mac. Did I stump you?
Well, honestly, I mean, I think that in just the everyday thing of blogging, you're going to resonate with search engines because, again, you've got the ability to quickly and easily have new content coming up, and the links are going in, links going out, so that's going to help. I think Lee Auden is going to be covering SEO later, and he would definitely be much more versed in this than I am. But I think you can always be mindful of what are the sort of core topics that you want to hit on with your blog. I mean, is your blog going to be positioned as a foodie blog? Is it about local tourism, whatever topics you're wanting to hit on, just make sure that you have posts built around those core topics. Now, a lot of people like to really focus on make sure you have these particular keywords targeted in the post, these particular keywords targeted in the title. I think you should be mindful of your keywords and how you want to position your content, but I don't think you should get to the point where, let's say, for example, you write a particular post and you're thinking, I still need to find a way to work these 3 particular keywords in. I think if you start going that far, then you're fundamentally changing the way you position the content, and you're actually changing the content that you're creating. So I think that can be a little bit too much. I don't know if Ann wanted to add anything to that or not. But.
Yeah, just to build on what you're saying, Mac, I mean, I take a very practical approach to this. My overall feeling is that if you write a good blog, if you create content that people want to read, you'll be found. I wouldn't obsess too much, as Mac said, about insert this keyword here just so that, a search engine will pick you up. I think, ultimately the goal here is to write to your audience, to create compelling content for them. And I think Lee will talk a little bit about the search engine end of things this afternoon. But from a content perspective, I think that's the best you can do for your audience, for your business, and for yourself.
Fantastic. Mac, Ann, thank you so much. This has been very valuable. We've been getting great feedback. To everyone else, there are so many questions coming in. I'm sorry we can't get to them all, but if you want to start a discussion using inboundmarketing.com, you can visit the forums. That's inboundmarketing.com/forum, FORUM. Start a discussion, debate with your peers, and have fun with that. Other business, this recording will be available tomorrow on Tuesday, so please feel free to download that and review if you'd like. Also, big thank you to Marketing Profs. That's marketingprofs.com. They are a wonderful IMU partner, and without them, we wouldn't have the wonderful Ann and Mac to be a part. And other business, the next class will be in 2 hours. We've already chatted a little bit about that, and that's the SEO Crash Course to Get Found, or Get Found 102, with Lee Auden from Top Rank Online Marketing. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you later today. Enjoy.